Welcome to our special mid-season assessment of the late call. I love it. We're at week 8, or we're past week 8. We're going to reflect
Right.
back, and this segment is purely on defensive players. And defensive players are kind of hard to really define. I mean, there's so many great uh, players in each position. So instead of just top 10 players in general, we're just going to pick our top players so far this season in each position. Because
And a
oh,
flex.
yes, and one flex to kind of be like, well, I don't know, he's just that good. We didn't know where
Yeah,
else to put him.
we couldn't leave him off.
Right.
Right.
And so we get started off. We're gonna go with the lineman, and I would like to be the one to signify our own Wisconsin Badger boy, J.J. Watt. I think he's the best lineman in the league so
Uh,
far this year.
he's having a little bit, supposedly, of a down year, but he's got 8.5 sacks. He leads in tackles, I believe. Like he's still like by and large the best lineman, and it's really not even close.
Mm-hmm.
Fletcher Cox and Chandler Jones, I think, are having pretty good years.
Right.
Comparable, I think Jones has actually a tie with him as the sack leader. But just as a whole, I think Watt's just. I mean, if you're in an IDP league, you already know this because he's got like I think 12 points more than the second closest guy.
Right.
He's just got the best stats in everywhere. There might be a couple he's like tied in, but there's like no one has anything better on him. Not to my knowledge, at least.
What's also interesting is everyone kind of is talking about that he's having sort of his like off year, but realistically, he's pretty much on pace of the same stats that he had last year
I
at
think
this
he's
point in the
actually
season.
a little bit further ahead in sacks.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an interesting side note. They asked him if he knew how many, I think, tackles or how many sacks he had. They asked him one of those questions. He said, "I don't know, but it's more than I had at this point last year. So can we stop acting down here?" Like he was annoyed. It was pretty funny.
That is pretty funny. You don't want to annoy JJ
He
Watt.
got kind of snarky, and he doesn't usually get snarky, you know.
Yeah.
I would have been like, "Yes, sir." But yeah, he's definitely still the best lineman in the league.
Right.
Um, Linebacker, Luke Kuechly. I know he was out for quite a few games, but if you look at the games he's played in, like it's not even close.
Yeah.
This guy's putting up monster numbers.
He's putting up monster numbers, and look what he did on Monday night. This
Right,
past Monday.
right.
This
Just in that game.
it's just in that game alone, and times that by 7 weeks, pretty much.
Right. I mean, outside of the fourth quarter, a little bit of a collapse there that they ultimately recovered from. I mean, when you see him on that field, like Andrew Luck would make a change, and Luke Kuechly would like, oh, like he call an audible, like he looks like a quarterback out.
Yeah.
There. Was just in his element. Like he's I mean, the Saints lost to the Panthers, and they didn't even have Luke Kuechly. So I'm really, it's if with the Saints offense being more on, that's going to be a fun game for sure. That's coming up, and honestly, this Packer game is going to be a fun game too, because you mentioned Rodgers. Uh, After he loses, generally has a fire under his ass.
Yep.
So I'm very, like obviously the Panthers are a division rival for me, but I'm really a fan of Luke Kuechly. I can't help it because I just enjoy watching this guy. Like,
I think it's hard for you not, or for anybody not to be a fan of him when you're watching him play.
yeah,
Well, I think going up next, we're gonna go with the corners. Josh Norman. I
another
think.
Panther on this
Right.
list.
Yeah. Two Panthers on the list, and it's funny. Before we even go on about Josh Norman, is we had a few honorable mentions. You said a few with like Chandler Jones and everything, and
Right,
it's ironic that we have two Panther players on here, but at the
right,
same time, uh, we felt we should just give an honorable mention to the entire Denver defense because it was a little unfair.
right. When you look at the defense as a whole, they're the best unit by far,
Yeah.
and it's really hard to pick apart any one guy that's like this is the reason they're winning. I think but just the unit as a whole does everything. Like Von Miller is obviously running that defense, and uh,
You have a
Aqib
key to
Talib
lead.
and the no fly zone as they've been calling it.
Yeah.
Uh, um, what's his name, Darkwa, I think, something like that. The other guy that's like with Von Miller, he's had
Right.
a damn good year too. Um, yeah, it's just it's Denver, man. Like holy shit.
These are guys who would be top notch, I think, even if they're any other team. But the fact that they're all
Right.
together just really lights up how good that they can work together and how good their defense truly is. And they've been saying lately that defenses win Super Bowls. Well, you might as well, you know, write them in for big Super Bowl contenders this year then, because they by
Sure,
far have the best.
sure. Um, and honestly, the reason I guess we didn't do an individual here is because we could have easily put nothing but Broncos for this list,
Yeah, except for
and we
maybe
didn't want,
linemen, we still
well,
have
except for
BJJ
mine.
Watt,
Yeah, yeah,
and that's it.
right. They could have completely dominated like every position, and I know it seems kind of plain to say since they have two Panthers, but I mean honestly, um, I guess I'll just go ahead and mention our flex was another corner who was um, well,
Darrell
Darrell
Revis.
Reeves. Shocking, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he just barely got the nod over that. If you give Darrell Revis the nod over Josh Norman, pretty understandable.
Mm-hmm.
Darrell Revis only has defended 3 passes this year, and that says a lot because it's not because they're throwing the ball on him. It's because they haven't attempted very many more than 3 passes in his direction.
Yeah.
You know?
People are scared to throw it to Revis, and he's known for it.
Yeah.
It in similar light, people are scared to throw to Richard Sherman. But honestly, so far this year, I feel like Darrell Revis is having a better year than what Richard Sherman has.
Right, right. And DeQuell. That's the name that was
Man, that's
escaping
been
my mind
bugging
a minute ago.
you.
DeQuell Jackson.
That's been bugging
Yeah,
you
yeah,
this whole time because I could tell that
yeah. And I
you've
was
just
like
been constantly like focused
grappling
on
with the
that.
name. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been trying to grapple with this name. DeQuell Jackson, man. God, it was bugging me. Orleans Darkwa was that guy that was playing for the Giants that had a little bit of a breakout game the week before.
Mm.
But that's neither here nor there. But yeah, yeah.
And I think
And then who's our safety? Who do I think introduce our safety?
our safety, honestly, one of my favorite players who is not a Packer, because my coworker and my partner at work and everything, he asked me this, who my favorite player of all time, or not of all time, but who's playing right now that's not on the Green Bay Packers, and it was a tie, and one of them was Charles Woodson, is our safety. I think which is almost more crazy that he's 39 years old. He's leading the NFL in interceptions. He's
He got 5 interceptions.
yeah.
Right. That's crazy.
Uh, he's no showing no signs of slowing down. Really, uh, as much as it's ironic that he's the same age as Peyton Manning, and you've heard up until this last week.
Well,
Of,
right, they came in the same year. Like
yeah, and you've heard nothing
they've been
about.
rivals ever since college, as far as like for the Heisman.
Oh
Like,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
like going back that far, draft picks, everything.
And definitely just the fact that people talking about how Peyton Manning's like, well, is he slowing down? Is his age getting to him? That talk has never once come across Charles Woodson this
Oh,
year, and
he
that
looks
says a
damn good.
lot.
Like we picked him as the best safety in the league, and he's pushing 40.
Mm-hmm.
That's damn impressive. On the opposite end of our spectrum, our I guess last honorable kind of mention guy. This was our runner-up for safety was the Honey Badger,
Yeah,
Tyrann Matthew. He's been all over the field. If you watch Arizona games,
yeah,
he's blown a few coverages though that I think kind of keep him out. And I'm pretty sure he's led with passes defense at safety, which is probably not as important as it would be at corner, obviously.
yeah.
But quite a few tackles. I forget the number offhand. But yeah, that's the two. you're picking safeties, you probably won't Matthew just because he's a little younger. But if you're going for a win now perspective, Charles Woodson has got, and we're looking at this from the perspective of kind of the whole season too. I know this is our halfway point, but honestly, I don't see any of these guys losing their spot throughout the season. I really don't.
Yeah, I don't either. I can't see just somebody just picking up, big time halfway through the season, and then any of these guys slowing down to allow anybody to surpass them at any point. I really don't. I feel like, if anything else, all of these players are going to just continually getting better as the season goes on. Because even some of these guys that you could argue might have had slow starts, maybe their whole team had sort of a slow start. But if they're on a team that's definitely getting rhythm, which honestly, all of these, well, besides maybe Houston, but all of these other guys are on teams that uh, already either have a rhythm or definitely are gaining big momentum. And with all of that going behind them, there's no way that any of these guys would ever slow down. The only thing that could potentially stop them is if they get a season-ending injury, and that's about
Right,
it.
right.
Which hopefully doesn't happen to any of these guys because they're all great.
We've seen enough of that this year.
Exactly.
It's pretty bad. But
Exactly.
yeah, I guess that's our list. So there you go. Watt, Kuechly, Norman, Woodson, Darrell Rivas, the entire Denver defense.
All of them.
It's an honorable mention to the Honey Badger and Chandler Jones, and I guess I throw it out there to Fletcher Cox too. He's doing some
Oh,
good stuff
right.
really
Right.
on a bad team,
So,
mediocre.
all in all, if you want to leave us a comment, and if you disagree with us, or you would rather see somebody else maybe in any of these top positions for defense, let us know. And I would gladly like to hear from anybody else. And then if you want to join us on Facebook and Twitter, there's links in the description below. And I am excited to see these guys for the rest of the season going on.